All right. Since I'm the last one, and I am in the one stopping everybody from either going home, Josh giving away the free prizes, etc., we'll get started. My name is Bruce Dennis. I've been limping around. I'm going to tell you all now. I have no idea what I did with my knee. Basically, Father Time has come back and said, like, yeah, there's a reason I'm undefeated. I think I heard it sleeping, and I'm not even kidding, which is sad.
Was there somebody? Never mind.
The sleep fighting.
I don't know. I honestly, my primary hormone is testosterone. I've already set the date of, if this doesn't feel better, the doctor will be called. So you know it's actually, yeah, it hurts. So, thank you for showing up. I'm shocked there's this many people here.
We had nothing else to do.
Listen, for me,
That's why we're here too.
Now, thank you for the panel that this all came up from. I called Josh 2 weeks ago. Hey, by the way, this would be a good talk if you have some filler for, something you need some. That turned into, that's a good idea. So when you submit this and we'll be having this talk now, like, how did I not see this from Josh? So yeah, I walked completely into that one. Panel's just some people that are probably smarter than me, so that's not saying much. But what I wanted to do for the community was we all talk about this. Okay, this cert versus the college degree versus experience. What is the best option for everything? And we all hear this. You all hear certain questions in the interviews, certain things around here. So I actually wanted to have a conversation with the community on what's really the best choice for something. So out of here, first we have Chris Rossi. Chris is from the Philadelphia area, CISO, has some certifications, has a degree. Next, Brandon Keith from the PA area, lead cyber practice, has a degree, has some certifications. Next up, Joe Klein, Virginia. Joe is computer science, does not have a degree, but has certifications. Next, we have Matt, who is apparently like Madonna, and it's only one name.
That's correct.
Matt's the man. Awesome. Matt is from Maryland. ISO, has certification, has a degree. Jason Griswold, correct?
Yep.
Not good, it's not a normal name for me. I'm not very good. Jason's from PA.
You changed your name. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm just speaking.
Oh, okay. Works in DevOps. Does not have a degree. Does not have certifications. And lastly, J.R. Presney. Please help me with this. Presney.
This is why I only have one name.
People have butchered it all.
Now, JR is from Maryland area, security architect, has a degree, has certifications. Now, the reason I was doing all that, wanted to frame a couple things for this discussion. First of all, when we're talking about certifications, we all know that there are people out there that have, their job is to get the alphabet after their last name. I'd really like to limit this to some,
I do want to make a comment.
Yes.
There is no certifications that have Q's and Z's in them.
So are you saying you're going to start a certification QZ?
Z. There's just no Z. Therefore, you can't say you have every certification A through Z. Go ahead.
That just sounds like a business opportunity. A new certification body called Z.
Challenge accepted.
Give me a year.
only matter of time until somebody said that one, and I guarantee there'll be one.
My sister is a certain curriculum developer for a certification authority, so give me a year.
Awesome.
No joke.
So things that are well known have value. Obviously something from ISC, some from ISACA. There's some other agents or other bodies that results vary. Let's take off the table the ones that, we started with this cert and made 27 other certs after that to try to make ourselves relevant. I am not talking about something like OCEG that you pay us and you continue to pay $400 for our certs every year, we'll give you something after your last name. And I'm pretty sure it does not have too many jobs asking for their cert. I want to talk about something that, yes, is well known, has some kind of value to it. Now, college degree. We're at this point, we're going to say a bachelor's, master's, PhD. Obviously, we know there are associates out there. So, how important is that to life in general? And then work experience, like to limit it to at least working in IT. Most people have held some kind of job. I'm not talking about the one that, well, I worked at Target, I worked at the steak shop, I was a short order cook. Let's go with something that, you know, my computer might be done, or security, administration, development, let's keep it into that range. So for the sake of this, what I'm really trying to do is, there are 3 different people. And what I'm looking for is the panel and everybody here. What is really something that's important? So the first person we have is Mark. Mark is a recent college graduate. So obviously, check the mark on he's got a college degree. Does not have real experience, does not have a certification of any level. Next we have Mary. Mary has 4 or 5 years of some IT work. So there is a resume that she can put out there. And then we have Dave that has 10 years of experience, does not have any certification, does not have a degree. So what we're looking for is, like in these 3 cases, okay, how would we help Mary move forward? Dave is talking about he wants to do something else, you know, which cert is the best for me, something of that nature. So,
You only have 3 states, you actually should have 9 states to deal with all the variations, but okay.
I understand, I tried to simplify it.
We only have 20 minutes.
And there's no screen on purpose. One of which is, I didn't want to take away from the discussion. I didn't want a whole lot of slides and graphics, like, no, I wanted to hear from like different people what they think. And apparently things underneath the counter too, when I hit it, they're going to talk to me as well. So
Do you have a
no idea what that
remote
was.
microphone? Do you have a remote microphone?
Something fell and I don't know what it is.
I'm not
No.
sure what you dropped either.
You got me?
No, we do not. You'll just have to speak up.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody else wants to ask?
Oh, no, that doesn't move into the.
So we're sending the guy with no certs in to solve the problem.
No, the guy with no shirts is still sitting over here.
No, I thought-
Search
Joe
category,
has-
sorry.
I thought it was only.
Joe was a yes, yes.
Right, that's what it was. Was there anyone just yes? Right. Not yes, yes?
I've already lost track.
It's on the pool.
I already
Anyway,
forgot what I-
let's
I already forgot what I
continue.
said.
Yeah.
Names?
All right,
In front of us
so-
on the table?
First up, let's pick on Mary just because I felt like doing it.
Or the slide?
So, on the panel, who would like to start first when I start posing some questions?
No.
Yeah, too late. Man just got voluntold.
You open your
Mark,
mouth.
Mary, Matt. Mary was the I
Mary-
have.
Mary has 4 years of experience.
4 years of experience, but no certs and no degree.
Yes, that's correct, sorry. So, now, Mary is looking at moving ahead in cybersecurity. What-
Is Mary's, see, I have to ask follow-up questions, because this is actually a very complex subject, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'll just preface before I address Mary specifically that I moved over from non-security IT into security over the course of many years and received a lot of different advice from a lot of different people on these exact topics, and have since discovered that some certs are valuable to some people and some aspects of the industry, some aren't. Some value education, some don't, so it actually is a very much an it depends. So to give Mary a good answer, you know, does she already work in security or just in IT? Is she interested in furthering her career in the vertical she's in, or transitioning to another area of security? All these things would have to be answered before you could really give her good advice, because there is no, in my opinion, there's no concrete answer for certs are good and this cert will help you. Education is good and this degree will help you, because it really depends on what you're looking to do.
I'm gonna add to that.
By all means.
Okay, from the education standpoint, there's actually 2 types of universities out there that train. Don't ask why I asked. One is specifically meant for deep dive, one is to create analysts, okay? Which even going to university puts you in two different situations. You know, if you're an analyst, some contractors, some people will hire you. If you're a deep dive into a specific topic, then they'll hire you, and that's where it becomes really difficult. It's not just one thing, it's the two major categories of how people are being trained in universities at any degree, at any level. Does that make sense?
As much as I love I actually really like the ideas panel. I would love, we don't have time, but I would love to be like, okay, you, what do you want to do? Let's see what advice we can give you right now. But that's not really feasible. We'll talk about it.
Football is tomorrow, so we cannot make this go on
I said
forever.
we can't do that, I know.
He stuck his tongue out, but just want to mention it. Okay.
Let the record show.
The other aspect of what cert she should get or whether she should go for education is, what job is she looking for?
Yeah.
Because in security, if you're going towards something that's going to do federal contracts, you have to have certain certs.
Yep.
Versus other aspects of security where you don't need certs or education, you just need experience. So there's a lot of bits and bobs that have to sort of be.
And ironically, some of the certs that are required in one area may actually be looked down upon by another area.
Right.
So
Sure.
half the room probably knows which one I'm talking about.
I was gonna ask for an example.
Oh, well, actually, for example, the Love ISC Squared, nothing against them, I'm not saying anything bad. The CISSP.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a higher level technical or a management position that involves at all a federal space, it's almost a requirement. However, a lot of purely commercial places look at it and say, yes, just like advertised, it's a mile wide, an inch deep, but we want something more than an inch deep. This doesn't really mean much to us.
Right.
This is a management level position and you're looking at a tech career. So, I mean, not to say any one cert is good or bad, but depending on what you want to do, you honestly might be wasting your money and time getting something that's not going to apply towards what you want to do.
The other thing is we have more software-defined technologies. So yesterday, it used to be, hey, get very good about, if you're doing network security, get very good about learning how to do network security. Now from the network security standpoint, if you don't know Python, you can't use software-defined networks. Therefore, essentially, you're out of a job until you actually learn that. So if she was in that career or moving into that career, that's a different change, a different perspective. Same thing with pen testing. For pen testing to low end, it used to be press button, point, and go. Same thing with assessments. Now they're expecting a lot more of people getting out there. So again, it's very, very specific. In fact, even assessments are now down to the type of technologies they assess.
Chris, any thoughts?
I'd say we should
Well,
look for it.
you know, I think that my thoughts in general on certs are, you know, folks should be looking to get certs that are indicative of the skills that they have, not the skills that they want. You know, I think a lot of folks go into it and say, oh, I want to be an expert in X, so I'm going to get that cert. And the reality is you can study for that, and most of the time, you know, for the vast majority of certs, you can get that cert by studying, and now you have that cert, but you're probably not representing that cert yet to the way that in the way that you should. And so my advice to folks has always been, you should be looking to get experience in the area that you want a cert in, so that when you get the cert, you're at the appropriate level of expertise for that cert, so you're representing it appropriately. So when you say, yes, I am an OSCP, now that's a bad example because it's really hard to get the OSCP.
Yep.
But like maybe let's say you want to go and get a networking cert, you should have the experience working with those networking technologies to the point where getting that cert is relatively easy. Of course, there's going to be studying, there's nuances, but relatively easy. And that's the approach I take personally, is to say, hey, if I'm going to have a cert next to my name, I want to be able to represent that cert. If someone comes to me and says, oh, you're a whatever, you know, I would expect to be able to speak eloquently on that topic. And that's the advice that we give our team as well, is to say, you should be driving towards an expert level cert, but you should be driving towards it by focusing on getting experience in that area, so that when you do finally go get that cert, you can represent it.
I think for Mary, you know, you almost put.
Back to
Yeah,
Mary.
come back to
What about
Mary.
Mary?
I want to give Mary some advice here. when you're looking, as been stated, depending on the job opening, there's gonna be certain certs or maybe a job opening, or for whatever reason, that company or that HR department is filtering by you have to have a bachelor's degree, or you have to have a master's degree. There's some little homework from Mary on what she wants to do. But in cybersecurity, I like to tell people you can get a degree, but you can also get into this field without it. It's not necessarily required, but that may require a little bit more work for you to stand out when people are looking at your resume. If I see a resume and it says, hey, I contribute to this open source penetration testing tool or this project, you have something on there, hey, I contribute to security on one of these other projects, I do these Git pulls. All of a sudden, that's way more valuable than any degree or cert that is in any of this other stack of resumes. I'm throwing the rest of them off my desk. We're calling this guy tomorrow. Actually, can we get him in today? And I think that's the challenge that I say to Mary. So if you have a bachelor's degree, if you have a master's degree, if you have these certs that these people are looking for, yeah, you check all their boxes, so you might get a more phone call. So it's more about, how do I stand out from the crowd and get that job, that dream job I want? Because I think a lot of people who are here, we're here because we're passionate. And even the people who are here in this room learning, who want to get into cybersecurity, they're a step up from those people, as was spoken earlier, who just want a job in security for the pay or something else. People who are here really want a career and want to make a difference. And that in itself is a differentiator. So that's why I would tell Mary.
JR?
Yeah, for Mary's situation, she needs to do some research on those career fields. Like in Joe's talk, look at CyberSeek, see what these careers are looking for, and then get those certs to get her in that position for those careers.
Okay.
She has to do some.
Okay. All right. So let's pick on Mark, the college graduate. So Mark has just recently graduated. Well, we're going to say a bachelor's degree, has a leading university, blah, 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 decent GPA, et cetera, et cetera. In his case, Jared, let's pick on you first since you spoke last.
Okay.
What kind of advice would you give him?
Now what is the situation?
Mark is recent college graduate, wants to get into information security.
No certs.
What role?
No certs, no.
Again,
No certs, no experience, so
that's correct.
No
Has a
certs,
college
no-
degree.
has a college degree, so he'll probably have to, I would say, look into maybe get into security operations centers. They typically have junior analyst roles that he can get into, and then from there, he can figure out what he wants to do next. His situation is similar to me, because I started in a security operations center, and then from there, I went to incident response team. Once I figured, okay, that's kind of cool, I want to do that. So that's the kind of advice I'll give to him, is find that junior position, and then from there, see where you want to go next. Like you said, you're looking for a career, not a job.
Joe, what do you have to think? What do you have to say about it?
First person to point to me.
Sure, why not?
In that particular case, I would say if you're not participating in the community, you can ask other people, hey, what do you do every day? Some of you I walked around and asked those questions about already. What do you do every day? Do you like your job? What are the challenges? Tell me about something about this. Plus, you avoid the whole HR framework. You basically can talk to the people directly that are looking to hire, and not the HR. Therefore, maybe a degree doesn't matter, maybe cert doesn't matter. In this case, the certs may not matter because you have the experience programming, doing whatever with the degree that allows you to drive yourself into succeeding. And then once you're in that position, then it's time to look at that position and other positions you want to jump into from a career standpoint. That make sense?
Yes. Chris?
I think a lot of times, if you're a college grad, the kind of jobs you're going to be applying for, the people that are looking to hire college grads, they're not always expecting you to, a lot of times they're not expecting you to have a cert at all. They may require that you get a cert over a period of time, but what they're looking for are, maybe they need to have a college degree for some requirement, but if, whether or not that's true, what they're looking for is are those differentiators, right? Like, okay, well, what do I do? How can I truly show someone that I have the skills that they need? And sometimes that's not, not always a technical skill, right? Sometimes it's, am I a culture fit, and do I have the right attitude, and can I show that I can learn, and how do I express those things to the right organization? And what I would suggest is anybody that's recently a college grad is to put in the work to figure out where you want to try to have an opportunity. Try to find what kind of organization or role you think would be interesting. Don't just take a shotgun approach and take the first job that you find. Try to figure out what's interesting to me and how do I differentiate myself to that organization. And if you've had the opportunity, do some internships while you're in school.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Brendan?
I think one of the biggest advantages of going to a college, and I don't berate college because I'm still going even now, so sometimes I make fun of it, but yet I'm a bit of a hypocrite there, is that you build a lot of connections. Just like when you go to these events, I've met with lots of great connections and made, traded business cards and made new friends for life. You do that in college too. And I don't just mean, people you hang out with and drink with or the frat house. I mean actual business contacts. And if you spent $40,000, $50,000 on a degree, you should be taking full advantage of all those alumni benefits that come with it. In the degree I went for, I now have Pluralsight for life. And I take full advantage. I'm sure they're like, this Brandon guy is racking up the bill.
Nice.
But those are the things, if you spent the money to do that, take advantage of that. When I bring in someone who has a college degree, to me, education is about sparking that imagination and interest. And that's the same thing with a certification, right? So maybe you were taking this certification, and part of that was you learned about Wireshark, and you dove more into it, and you started studying the TCP/IP protocol. That's great that's where that education led you, and if that's where that degree led you, that you dove more into it. Unfortunately, in this industry, and even other fields and industries, you can go and get a degree or you can get a cert, and you can just learn and then brain dump, right, as soon as you are done using it, and you have to use it in order to keep it. And that's the first thing I ask people who got a degree. So what did you do in school? What are the projects that you did? I want to know what you've done. Don't tell me the same thing that's on this piece of paper you said. If you can have a conversation with me for 15, 25 minutes about what you've been doing, the home lab you've set up, what you did, you got that education spoon-fed from you, from an instructor. You had multiple viewpoints from people in the field. You were forced to read a lot of large textbooks. I know because I had to read them. Tell me what you learned from that experience. If you didn't learn anything from that, I don't know if there's anything that's going to spark your passion for this field. So that would be my advice there.
Matt, what say you?
Actually, it was very similar, but I want to build on it a little bit. You mentioned that one of the benefits of getting a degree is the fact that you make a lot of varied connections with people. One of the other benefits of getting a degree, whether or not you like it or not, you are forced to deal with different aspects of the topic and different aspects of industry. If you come in from, I was adjacent to this in a previous job, now I'm interested in it, you're coming in on a red teaming side or a blue teaming side, or you have a very specific entry point. When you get a degree, you're going to school for 4 years. You learn a little bit of everything. That gives you the opportunity to figure out what you're more passionate in, as opposed to coming in on Route A and never realizing for 10 years that this is what you actually want to do. And that gives you the opportunity to not just explore what you learned in school, but know what it is you want to build your home lab for and what it is that you want to actually dive into. And it gives you a better idea of where you want to approach the industry. And you have a better opportunity to go in where you really are passionate and be able to impress somebody a little better and be able to show them what it is that you care about. And that'll sell you better than words on a resume any day, as long as you can get past HR.
The HR
That's a whole other
boundary.
story. And Jason?
So I'd have two things. First of all, you're fresh out of college. You've already got a learning mindset. You've been doing this for 4 years. Keep it going. Keep learning. Get into whatever you can, whatever you're passionate about. Learn what you can. Pluralsight, free sites online. Go dig into Stack Overflow. Whatever it is, learn those skills and keep working on those skills. The other thing is, and it was touched on a little bit, networking is, in my opinion, way better than, you know, blasting your CV everywhere and expecting to get through the HR barrier. I've met more people and gotten more opportunities to talk to hiring managers coming to BSides and DerbyCon and other conferences than callbacks I've ever gotten just blasting out resumes. Right. So actually, I think probably every professional job I've had is from networking, not from sending out. I mean, the resume came after, but every one of them was an opportunity that I got because I was talking to people, and that's to me, that's way bigger than trying to make sure you have the alphabet soup to get through an HR block.
All right, and last up we have Dave. Now, Dave has the experience, does not have the degree, does not have any certifications. So let's just say Dave has some decent skills. He's made some contributions to some software. Basically, Dave should be able to get a job. Jason, what kind of advice would you give Dave if he's looking at moving forward in his career?
Honestly, it's the same thing. At that point, he's already established. He's probably in the industry already. If he wants to jump to a different job, at that point, it may be worth looking at getting a cert or two to get through those barriers. But that networking piece, I think, is really still key. Picking up, you know, a CISSP, if that's the sort of the track he's on, or you know, going for some of the harder certs is a path forward. The hiring that I've done is not in security; it's outside of it. Certs to me are sort of just letters I look at later. But when you're hiring and when you're in the industry, you learn which certs are actually worth looking at. So for me, it's, you know, like if I was looking for a network engineer, I'd be looking at, you know, CCIE type certs. For, you know, systems guys, I'm looking for things like RHCE, RHCA. Those certs I know from experience are tough to get, and those people that get those certs really know what they're talking about. But that's sort of a icing on the cake. When I'm talking to somebody and I'm looking to hire, I'm more interested to see their passion. I'm more interested to see that making a comment about a technology we're using sparks a conversation where we've sort of gone off the reservation of doing an interview, and now we're just sort of palling around and figuring out what we know. That gets people further in my interview process than looking at it and going, okay, we got a degree. Oh, look, we've got 2 degrees, and here's these 12 certs. Oh, I'm gonna hire that guy. And you can hire the worst person in the world that way.
2 degrees and 12 certs? Wouldn't they have any time to get experience?
Right.
At all. Brendan?
I think when you're talking about experience, the biggest thing I run into, and I actually get this a lot from people who I have all these years of experience, why am I not getting a job? And I think some of it is, again, we touched on it a little bit, networking is super important, but some of it is how you present yourself too. You know, know your audience. If you're going in to work for a job that, you know that it's a suit and tie affair, don't show up in shorts and a t-shirt. That's not a good idea. We have to do a little bit of thinking here when, depending on where you're going and where you want to fit into the company. Understand that all companies have different cultures, they're full of different people, and you're selling yourself to these people, whether it be HR or even the IT people. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're going to a conference specifically to look for a job, you can dress in a nicer polo. It's not that much harder, right? And just be professional in your language and know some of the people you're talking to. Because you never know when that other person on the other side to you might be the IT director that could be the next guy to hire you. So you want to make sure in your language and everything you're displaying, you display that professional manner when you're doing that. Because you can't just feed your resume in and say, well, I have degrees, I have certs, I'm going to check all the boxes, so I don't have to do any of the legwork. You have to make sure you're doing the legwork, because despite what we know in the industry, we can look at skill and tell skill. The HR people don't. They look at the degrees, they look at the certs. They're given this list, you know, and I talk to the recruiters all the time. They're like, Brad, do you know anyone with this UPD TPC thing? You know, and I'm like,
Everybody needs it.
I was like, what are you talking? Oh my goodness. That have no idea, right? These people aren't in it every day like we are. So we have to tell a story, and you have to make sure you craft that story properly to get hired in potentially the job you want.
JR?
Yeah, well, first thing, if someone has 10 years of cybersecurity experience, they have a job, regardless if they don't have certs and degrees. But if he was looking for a job, like you said, the networking piece, trying to get past some of the HR blocks will be his best route to getting hired. And since he doesn't have a degree, certs will be quicker to obtain some certifications in something he already has experience in. So I would recommend him go to certification route geared towards what he wants to do in his career.
Matt?
Yeah, because the 10 years of experience, you already know where you are. If you want to, if you're looking for a job after 10 years of experience, it's pretty much you're wanting to go one of two places. Either upwards, in which case, with no certs, no degree, a cert might be useful, because if you're trying to move into management, they're looking for something more than just, I've got experience. And if you're trying to make a lateral movement into some other area of cybersecurity, then it's the same thing. A cert, I agree, would be the best way to go, because I already know this. I've been researching this, and I've been working on it in my own time, and this is where I want to go, so let me do a little bit of work at home. Let me do, build a home lab and do some experimenting, get a cert in it, and now it's a lot easier to transition over laterally to that. Because with 10 years of experience, if you're not doing anything, you're just going to work every day, that's fine, and you'll get your annual raises and maybe a bonus, and you'll be the exact same place you were in 10 years, unless you put some effort into it.
You had a question?
Yeah, so when you guys are hiring people and you see on the resumes they get a degree, does it matter too much where it comes from? Will you see them get a bachelor's from like a place and say, oh, that's not really?
Personally,
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of hiring, because I work at a pretty small company right now, but I don't care if you have a degree or not, personally.
Okay.
I will say, there are people above me in my company who do care that you have a degree and they prefer it. So I don't care where it's from. I want to come in, when you come in and sit down and ask you, what did you learn in school? What was interesting? What did you take out of it? Where did you go with it? I could care less if it was an online thing that you did 2 hours a week over the course of the last 5 years, or if you busted your ass to get a 4-year degree in 2 years. Doesn't make a difference. It's what you got out of it, not where you got it.
Yeah, I would echo that, what's important is that, and I will preface this by saying, in the past we've hired and said, okay, well, minimum requirement, I have to have a degree, and over time we've evolved and decided that that's not really so important. It's a piece of the puzzle, but it's no longer a requirement. In our industry, it's actually a deterrent for us to put that requirement out there. It really hurts our ability to hire. But what I care about is, if you did get a degree, what I'm looking at is the fact that you finished something. You could have an English degree for all I care, much less where it's from. What I care about is that, okay, is it accredited? I'm dead serious. I mean, some of the smartest people I've ever worked with, they're English degrees, not to diss on English, I'm just saying in the context of
Philosophy degree with an English minor, actually.
That's what I'm saying.
When I said I have a degree, that was my first degree. I was in the industry for 10 years before I got my first IT degree.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's so many, and that's such a common story, right? It's just that the value that I see from someone that has a degree is that they completed what is oftentimes a very challenging process. It's a long, challenging process to get a degree, whether it's 2, 4, whatever. And that's what I care about, is that they completed something, they finished something. But yeah, I mean, where is not as important.
Question?
Yes, while we're on the topic of degrees in education, in my experience, from what I'm hearing, that PhDs, doctorate degrees, a lot of times they don't get called. They put those degrees in another stack because they're looked at as more so researchers and not actually technical. So I just kind of wanted to hear from the panel your version or your opinion of that.
That's interesting, right? We do. So I do consulting. So we hire a lot of folks in kind of that new, hire I should say college grad to a few years experience range. But because we need to mold them into how we do things, We don't often hire very experienced people. It's rare because it's very challenging to create a culture fit, and we do things weird, you might say, or different than a lot of other places, and it just hasn't worked well for us. So we've not run into that, but I think there is a kind of a negative connotation of, well, that person is going to, even if it's not true, that person's going to expect more than we can pay them, or they're not going to function in our environment because they're an academic or whatever it might be. I think that definitely exists.
I have friends that have actually taken off in order to get the phone calls.
But I would say, I've never seen a PhD. The PhD's never shown up on a resume that I've seen. But my
They took it off.
my first thought, if I saw a PhD, was one of two things. Either this person's been working for a while and they went back to get their PhD, in which case they are more research minded and less technical, because your PhD is not a very technical degree. Or they went straight through and they got a bachelor's followed by a master's followed by a PhD, and that's a red flag for me.
Really?
Because just by the nature of academia, by the time something becomes curriculum and becomes a course and is taken care of, it's going to be out of date. It's such a fast-moving industry. So now we've got people who, if they go straight from one degree to another, not saying it's a bad thing, but that's a red flag for me, because the more technical stuff they learned in their bachelor's is now 10 years out of date by the time they're done with 6 years of school.
Gotcha.
And they better be able to show me that they are more up to date than their degree is.
And it depends on what job they're applying to. So if you're looking at PhDs that are applying to senior level positions, that's a little more reasonable. The one experience I had where we interviewed a PhD, it was essentially an entry level position. And it was sort of a red flag, and he came in for the interview anyway, and by the time we were done with the interview, we were like, why is this guy here? He expects something that this job is not even remotely close to. So part of that is know what you're applying for, and I couldn't tell you whether the guy knew or not. And the other piece is, like, and this goes with certs as well. If you want to have alphabet soup, that's great. Know what you're applying to. You don't have to put every cert on there, right? You don't have to put down every single bit of schooling that you've had. Don't lie and put things that you don't have. I'm sure that happens, but if you think that you're going to present too much experience for a job that you're actually looking to get, tone it down a little. That's allowed. You can do that. That's fine. And then go in and explain yourself. And you don't have to go in and go, well, I didn't put all this stuff on the application, but I'm also good at all these other things, because then that may backfire on you as well. But go in and sort of, you're going to present yourself to the job that you're applying for.
And it's interesting you say that. I only have associates, but I've taken dozens of courses. Coursera and everything else. I read 50 books a year and have for years. Basically, I just love learning information. The problem with it is, honestly, they wanted me to learn COBOL, and I was helping rewrite a C++ interpreter. And that's basically when I went, you want me? Oh, on OS2. Okay, so, and then I ran out of money.
Technology that's still out there in high demand.
Oh, yeah. So, honestly, sometimes it's, I've presented or I've done some deep dive research. I'm now at the point that I have to come in and give an hour to 2 hour presentation on a topic that I'm passionate about, a deep dive. And I have to then show documentation and references and everything else when I get up and speak. And let's see, one of them was how to disable the electrical grid. That was fun. And that was pretty fun. And the other one was how vulnerabilities are actually driven into the system, both accidentally and purposeful, based on the process from the very beginning to the very end, and some processes we could use to actually fix that. But that took hundreds of hours to do the research and make the calls and discuss LangSec and discuss standards bodies and things like that. So sometimes people do the deep dive into the stuff, and sometimes you can include a few of those Coursera or whatever certifications. Honestly, I'm really loving Safari books. Have you guys seen Safari books? Great classes, great hands-on, great demos. They're all current information, it's not old and moldy. There is no call ball, that's all I'll say. But it's really good stuff. And that's what, you know, people that didn't have their degree, that could be their choices. Just read, learn, experience, attend, you know, things like that.
As someone who's actually pursuing a doctorate degree right now, this is something that touches home for me a lot. I actually have a lot of friends who have gotten doctorates in various fields, especially in IT, and I talk to them a lot. And one of the things I think there's a disconnect between some of the people who have doctorate degrees and some people who are connected to some of these community events. Some of them you see involved in the community and some of them you do not. And there's this big shift, and I'm hoping to be part of the people trying to change them, because we really should be connecting and utilizing those resources in universities. We're meeting at a university today, and empowering our community. These are research centers built to do research. And the PhDs, if you went through 10 years of school, I'm already in the field, I don't know how you make it to that level without building and being a part of the field. I think that's part of the problem. Our definition of education is changing so much. You can be educated, and that education can come from Coursera, it can come from different areas. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing the same style as we did in the 1900s, sitting in a classroom, being lectured to. You know, so if you're one of the people who is pursuing a doctorate, I think the people that do pursue that can be agents of change in the universities and academia to make it more part of the community and be more inclusive. I think the people that get PhDs and are just pompous pricks about it, that think, I spent, you know, all this money and time.
Can I quote you on that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That spend all this money. No, I talk about it. There's a lot of people that have master's degrees that same way, and I'm like, slow your roll, stop it. You know.
Yeah, but those newly minted PhDs are so cute when they're that way.
You know, I get it. You learn some good research skills, right? Because you're force-fed to do it. You have to do it, and you're paying $5 grand a class to do it. So you better do it, or it's gonna cost you. But if you're gonna be part of that, I think the other big disconnect with the PhDs is often you'll see a huge average in salary. If you look up the average salary, like in IT security for a PhD, it's about $60,000. If you look at it for a master's degree, it's over $100,000. So in general, if you look at it, now this isn't, the reason for this is because what do you think the starting salary is for a teaching assistant or a professor at a university? That's where that salary is at. So, but if you're involved in the field, I know several PhDs that are in the field, they're doing things with data science, and they're doing some great things. The difference is, are you passionate about what you're doing? Are you involved with the community? Are you really learning this stuff? Or are you learning it enough to pass a test, fool professors into passing your papers, and just getting it to get it? And that's the difference.
I would also notice that there's one other issue. Because a lot of times they'll present at IEEE, but they won't actually show up here.
Yeah.
They'll have our ACM and they won't show up here. And it's really interesting because, you know, I listen to or participate in a lot of those type of events. And I keep on saying the practitioners would really enjoy this particular presentation. And they go, well, you know, that's below me, that's this, that's that. I'm not interested in attending a bunch of hackers that don't have their degrees.
Well, then when they apply to that job and the CEO is a hacker who doesn't have a degree and goes to BSides, they're gonna have a hard time finding a job.
Pretty much.
All right, we had a question in the back that trying to get to. I'm getting cut off.
So I kind of got some mixed messages on when to get your cert. Previously, Chris, you said that you should only get a cert when you pretty much already know the material, and you're just validating saying, I know the material. Then later on, I heard with the guy that had 10-year experience, you need to fill the gap for him to move to something else. Get the cert to fill his gap. So I got mixed messages on when you would suggest getting maybe this.
Well, he's wrong.
I might have actually misspoken, because I fully agree, you should not get a cert until you understand the material. You don't have to be working in that area to understand the material, though. If you want to make that lateral move I was talking about, figure out where you wanna go, learn the material, set up a lab at home, take some courses online, read some books, learn the material, then get the cert. Because I agree, you should not get a cert just because you can memorize questions and brain dump.
Oh, yeah,
You
no,
can
I mean,
understand.
obviously you have to know the materials so
Yeah.
that you can like get the
I-
cert.
I-
But like I'm saying, how can you get the practical
Yeah, but the
experience?
problem-
You need
the
that
problem
skill,
is-
yeah.
You can get the practical experience by spinning up VMs
Yeah,
at
by
home and
doing it,
teaching
yeah,
yourself.
okay,
But
sorry,
you don't have to do it for pay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, for a while, we had what we called paper CISSPs.
Yeah.
They
Oh, yeah.
would show up at a boot camp, and the next day, they would end up doing the test. And when you talk to them later, you would ask them specific questions, they go,
Can't answer.
nah, that was just for the test, I really don't know any of this stuff,
Yeah.
I just want the pay.
Right. So the
And that's what
problem
we're trying to
is,
avoid.
the problem is that
Okay.
you can get certs and not know the material at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've encountered far too many people with certs that have no idea what they're talking about.
Exactly.
If you get a cert and you're going for interviews, or, I mean, if you're gonna get a cert in general, you should be able to talk about that material in depth.
And that's where that comes from is, it is many certs, not every cert is equal, as we talked about, like, you know, the CCIE is incredibly difficult. OSCP is a great, cert just based on how challenging it is and hands-on. But a vast majority of them, if you're good at taking, I'm very good at taking tests, great, what an awesome skill. Certs are easy, so I know how not useful they are, because I got a lot of them at certain points as I was going through my career, and I realized, like, these are not really indicative of actual experience, and that's, I am a poster child for how they can be, and we want to try to avoid that, because you can walk into the scenarios and people are going to challenge you on that, and the worst thing you can do is go out and get a cert, not know the material, go interview someplace, and then not be able to speak on it, because that's
I do want to mention.
If I can tie this back actually to something that was said earlier, when it was mentioned you don't always have to put everything on your resume. A lot of people interviewing or hiring managers, even if you actually got, say, 12 certs, and you do understand the information, and you know that one of the benefits of only putting a couple on your resume when you're going for a job, is if someone sees 12 certs, alphabet soup, a lot of people, their first thought, whether it's true or not, is, this is somebody who just took certs and brain dumped them, and they are paper certs, because who in their right mind actually takes the time to learn all 12 of these, which, yeah, some of us do. But it's the assumption that you're one of those paper cert people when you do put everything on your resume.
And there's a bunch of companies around that do just that. $12,000 and you can get 18 certs or whatever it is.
So I'm actually gonna hop in on this one. You can actually read material. That doesn't say that you have to take a cert for it.
Right.
There are some
Right, amen.
garbage certs that straight up, I would read the material.
Yeah.
I have no intention of ever taking that test because it has no value for where my career is going, where I think I'm gonna go.
Right.
But there might be something useful out of their material that, hey, I might be able to leverage this for something else. So reading, there's no requirement for, if it stinks, okay, yeah, pass, I'll get to the next book. But just because I took a class or read a book or something and they offer a cert, does not mean that you don't have to follow that path entirely. So there's also something to say, and everyone on the panel has really said, have some experience. So you're marrying your experience with the studying. Going in for the certs, I always did some physical work, then I actually started studying for the test. Even though it's under the studying, I learned material that had to do with the test. And I went on a tangent, like, something, this is interesting. Went over here, then I came back, and at the very end, then I started actually studying for the test. You need to have some of both. Just going in, and I stunk at tests, and I figured out how to do it, and I became pretty good at them.
One slight variation on this. If you're in a position where your job will pay for certs and pay for you to go to boot camps, don't not go to a boot camp and get a cert just because you're not going to use it.
Those opportunities.
This goes back to, you don't have to put the cert on your resume, but you can use that as a launching point. So you can go and say, really don't know anything about switching, but my job's going to pay for it, so I'm going to go do that CCNA boot camp, and of course my job wants to know that I did the camp and did good at it, so I have to get a cert at the end. you can still get the cert and continue learning it later. When you feel that you have the knowledge and you can talk about it in depth, then start using the cert on your resume. You know, don't throw away an opportunity to go learn something just because you don't want to have a cert that you can't talk about yet.
Never turn down free training or free anything.
Yeah.
Ever.
I was working for one of those companies that had 12 certs. And what I found interesting from a security professional was when I was taking certs, I was going, oh, this is a common mistake. This is a vulnerability. Oh, this is wonderful. I love it when they do this. But they were actually teaching based on a specific vendor's product that processes that would cause security problems. So that's how I turned it. I finished the certs, but then I found all these really cool vulnerabilities to use. For the pen testing.
Yeah, so when you're at security certs are probably a little bit different, but if you go through something like CCNA, CCNP, and some of the earlier certs, what you learn there is technically correct. Please don't do that in a live environment.
No, never. But these are vendor-specific certs,
Right.
is what I find.
I was particularly thinking OSCP.
Yeah, and the thing about it, the OSCP, if you can go in there and pass that, you're doing great. That one's incredibly challenging. I mean, it's a lot.
I just like, okay.
Yeah.
And that's big with OSTP is what a lot of people look at is you can't paper cert it because it's hands-on. It's a lab test.
And proctor.
Anytime you can get your hands on training for a cert that has any kind of a lab component, it is going to be less apt to be looked down on by a hiring manager somewhere because
Great advice.
you had to do something, not just memorize something and forget it the next
Right,
day.
same as the Red Hat certifications, the
Right.
hands-on tests
Yes.
are valued.
Yes, Bob?
Unfortunately, I'm getting flagged like, we got 2 minutes left. Like, I really want to thank the panel. I would thank everybody else for including to this talk. Unfortunately, we will be getting kicked out soon, and I'm getting flagged. We're running out of videotape. You gotta go. You gotta wrap it up. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you.